Okay Guardians, we're taking a look at Song of Uryut today. This is for sure going to be a shorter review since the role that LMGs fill are probably fairly obvious, but this weapon surprised me enough that I still felt like it was worth a video. I'm going to just get PvP out of the way very quickly here, since there isn't generally that much to say about heavy weapons in PvP. They're there to provide at least a couple of free kills, and this weapon is no different. Arrowhead Break for your barrel, Ricochet for your mag, Zen Moment in the third column, Sword Logic in the fourth column, and a Stability Masterwork. Arrowhead Break for the higher recoil direction, Ricochet for range and stability, Zen Moment for flinch resistance, and Sword Logic for the damage boost. You'll have 47 meters of range, and after one kill you'll get Sword Logic, which will greatly increase your lethality. Zen Moment because flinch is annoying, it really just is that simple. There's not much else to say here. It's a 450 RPM LMG. These have been the best PvP options for LMGs in the game for a very long time, pretty much ever since Hammerhead came out with Black Armory. Now, moving on to PvE, this is where Song gets a lot more interesting. LMGs have seen something of a resurgence in popularity in PvE over the last year or so, particularly with the release of Root of Nightmares, where using Thunderlord and Divinity is how a ton of fire teams got their day one clear on Nezarec. And to this day, it remains a popular choice, though I would say Retrofit has dethroned Thunderlord as the go-to LMG for DPS. Now, just to be clear, LMGs won't generally put out as much hurt as other options such as rockets, but much like PvP, sometimes forgiveness and ease of use is just as important as lethality. If you're fighting a boss that's on the smaller side and more mobile, then LMGs can offer a higher ease of use just due to them being hit scan and not requiring a charge time like a linear fusion rifle. Ironically enough, Uryut is a perfect example of this. I'm not a raid Sherpa by any means, but I've helped a few teams get through Crota's End, and when we reached Uryut, I would usually recommend switching to LMGs and Div simply because Uryut is a very mobile target, and it's just way easier to have everyone lay into her with machine guns as opposed to having to worry about whether your team can time rockets properly or not. So that being said, Retrofit was usually my top recommendation, obviously with 4 times the charm and target lock. 4 times helps keep your mag full, and target lock's use here is obvious enough. And previously, if you'd asked me what LMG in the game was best for PvE, I probably would have said Retrofit, but I actually think that has changed with Song of Uryut. First, let's talk about roles. Starting with the DPS role, for testing purposes, I use the Ogre and Grasp of Avarice simply because it's one of my go-tos for testing, and the Harpy and Spire, which is the footage that you're going to see shortly, because the Harpy is the perfect target to test this sort of weapon on, since unlike something like the Ogre, it's not constantly pushing towards you and flinching you with a ranged attack. I use Banner of War just for higher survivability, however I did not use any damage boosters outside of what was available on the weapon. No debuffs, no surge mods. The purpose here is just to see the raw output of the weapon. To start, for your barrel, these weapons already have a ton of range, 47 meters at base without any range boosters, so for your barrel, go with Arrowhead Break just to make the weapon easier to control. For mag perks, Extended Mag to take your mag size from 53 rounds to 70. Third column, Reconstruction. This perk will overload the weapon's mag while it's stowed up to twice its normal capacity, taking Uryut to a massive 140 rounds in the belt. Of course, I also tried Rewind rounds, but with Rewind rounds I found I still needed to reload partway through the damage phase, and Reconstruction just had a higher overall uptime. In the fourth column, there's actually a couple of really good options here, Bait and Switch and Target Lock. I did test both of these perks, and of the two, Target Lock did end up having a higher damage output. This did surprise me a little. I honestly expected Bait and Switch to perform better here, but it's just as well because while Bait and Switch has minimal setup, Target Lock has exactly 0 setup outside of hit your goddamn shots. On screen now we'll have our DPS tests. I used the exact same role on both of these weapons, the only difference being Retrofit has 4th times and Song has Reconstruction. The first runs you're seeing here, starting with Retrofit and then going into Song, were a little scuffed, but Song still outdamaged Retrofit substantially. The next two runs, again starting with Retrofit then going to Song, were almost perfect minus a few missed shots, and Song still outdamaged Retrofit by a lot. The difference here is enough that for bosses where LMGs are helpful, I think my Retrofit is honestly going to be retired in favor of Song of Ur-Yut. This did honestly surprise me. I expected Song to do a little better than Retrofit did, but not by this much. The weapon is well worth your time as a DPS option without question, and it is for sure a better option than Retrofit. Now for Ad Clear, which is an area where LMGs have always been good, I would keep the exact same role but with one exception. Swap out Target Lock for Sword Logic. We've already talked about this perk a fair bit, but its description is onto the screen now along with the damage boosts it provides. Sword Logic is of course basically a much better version of Rampage, so its usefulness in this area is fairly self-explanatory. Reconstruction will give you that massive magazine size, and Sword Logic will just let you stomp out huge groups of ads with ease. This is particularly helpful in any activity where ads can soak up a lot of damage. There are other options here, of course, Volt Shot for example, which some folks swear by, but I've just never been a fan of. Cascade Point as well, though I would still take Sword Logic over Cascade Point to be sure. As a quick side note, while Reconstruction is still my go-to in the third column, for those of you using grenade builds, you do have Demolitionist as well, though I do think this perk is more useful on specials or primaries, with the main exception to that rule being rockets. It is also worth noting that with these damage perks, if you get a melee kill beforehand and proc Sword Logic, you'll clean out massive groups of ads without even really trying. And that's pretty much all that I have to say on Song of Ur-Yut, my new favorite LMG for PvE, and it's honestly really not bad in PvP either. This was a quick review, but there tends not to be as much to say on heavy weapons and special weapons, but this gun is definitely worth crafting, and aside from it being extremely effective, it's just so much fun to use. Especially if you get Sword Logic procced, those explosions are just so very satisfying to watch. Definitely make this weapon a priority for crafting on your Croto runs, you won't regret it. That's all for me today, Guardians. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit that like button and leave me a comment, let me know your thoughts on this weapon. As always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button with the bell icon, it really helps the channel out. I do apologize for the lack of videos, the situation at Bungie recently was just totally demoralizing, and we're at the end of a season, so things are kind of dead anyway. Videos should be more frequent now though, especially as we move into Season of the Wish. For now, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.